Alright, welcome back. Sebastian here. So time for my review of the 2025 Italian Grand Prix. Interesting race, definitely some drama towards the end there in terms of impacting the title fight for sure. But let's get right into it. So Verstappen started on pole position, Norris P2 after an excellent qualifying by the Red Bull driver. Hamilton, of course, starting P10 with that engine penalty that he basically, not engine penalty, grid penalty I should say, that he incurred at the previous round of the Dutch Grand Prix. Top 13 all starting on medium tires. And Hulkenberg, a bit of drama before we even get to the lights. Hulkenberg is told to box the car to retire. It seems like he had a hydraulic failure on the formation lap, and so retires the car. So a DNS for the Hulk. Verstappen very aggressive into turn 1 on the run down into turn 1. Leaves very little room for Norris on the inside, who had a very good start and basically almost pushes him onto the grass, but it was very borderline. Then when we actually get to the first corner, it's not a great shot here, but you can kind of get the general idea, and that is that Verstappen basically, Norris was quite aggressive in giving Verstappen very little room, and of course the intention was to force Verstappen to kind of back out and allow him to take the lead, and Verstappen decides to just cut turn 1 instead. However, very quickly over the radio, he's told by GP to give the position back, and I thought, this is probably going to be like a lot of other times Verstappen's gotten pole position. Norris is probably going to sail off into the distance, and Piastri is going to soon follow by, passing Verstappen. Leclerc, defending lap 3, Leclerc defending his position, his P3 very aggressively. He had gotten past Piastri on at the start, so he basically had a Red Bull, well at this point you had Norris in first, Red Bull in second, Piastri fourth, and then of course Leclerc in the middle in third. Lap 4 though, a bit of a surprise to many, myself included. Verstappen cleanly overtakes Norris around the outside of turn 1 and retakes the lead of the race. A bit of a surprise there that Verstappen was able to get that pace out, as I think many, myself included, thought that him being able to lead this race would really depend on him keeping the lead and not on him actually overtaking Norris on track. Hamilton also overtakes Alonso for P7 at turn 1. Lap 6, Piastri overtakes Leclerc at turn 1 for P3, and now he had a 3.7 second gap to Norris. So again, a bit of a gap, and that gap would continue to grow bit by bit as the race would go along. Hamilton overtakes Bortoletto for P6 at turn 1, so really good progress by Hamilton. He had a really good start, recovering from his grid penalty. Unlike Hamilton, Antonelli, who is been having a rough go of things in Europe, not a great start for him today. He started P6 on the road, had a really bad start. I think he was down into 10th or 11th, I would say. So yeah, very contrasting fortunes there between those two drivers. Piastri at this point now 4.1 seconds behind Norris, and again Norris was now falling further behind Verstappen. There's about 2.6 second gap. I thought, at this point, if Verstappen's basically able to pull away from Norris, unless you have something like a safety car or something that could have very easily have happened later in the Grand Prix, I thought at this point, Verstappen's lead's probably pretty safe at this point. Ocon was given a 5-second penalty for forcing Stroll off track. A little bit of a harsh penalty, but I thought, overall it was fair. Lawson, first driver to pit on the soft tires in this pit from the soft tires, and he would pit onto the hard tires. Strategy, or not strategy, but the pit stops today were quite something. Pro, I think, definitely messed up with the tire allocation. I think they should have gone a step softer on tires, as it was a very easy one stop for pretty much everybody. But yeah, Lawson pits from soft tires, goes on the hard tires, and that would have an impact on some other drivers a bit later on. Lap 13, Verstappen gets fastest lap, extends his lead to 3.8 seconds. Lap 18, is this the next point? Oh no, this is where Verstappen gets past Norris, and then this is the point that I wanted to get to, and that is lap 18. Antonelli overtakes Tsunoda at P9 for turn 1. So Tsunoda, of course, starting in P9, I think he basically maintained that position through the first couple laps, but unfortunately for him, pace was starting to fall away a bit at this point, starting to form a bit of a Tsunoda train. I guess we can call it a bullet train then, given Tsunoda was leading it, but he was starting to fall back from the group, including Alonso and Bortoletto. Not great pace from Tsunoda, in a race where his teammate obviously had a really good race. Let's see, lap 19, Behrman first drive on the mediums to pit, so 9 laps after Lawson. Tsunoda basically pits to cover him as they were very, very close on track. You can actually see Behrman behind Tsunoda in this shot on screen here. But yes, Tsunoda basically pits to cover, not successful. Behrman basically overtakes Tsunoda into turn 4 on his nicely warmed up tires. Lap 21, Alonso beats Bortoleto in the pits, just a straight fight between who had the better pit stop, and the Aston Martin pit crew basically won that for Alonso. Lap 23, Bortoleto overtakes Lawson at turn 4. So of course I mentioned before, Lawson had pitted quite a bit earlier, basically 13 laps prior, and basically those hard tires were doing such a good job that he basically was able to basically catch up, and the drivers who were basically in the points and pitting were basically pitting into where Lawson was. So, you know, Lawson getting a couple of incidents here with a couple drivers, but again, that was all due to him basically pitting so much earlier for everyone else, despite the fact that he started so much further down. Lap 25, very unfortunate for Fernando Alonso. He retires with a car problem. Suspension failed, basically going over a curb. Looked very, very unlucky, very unfortunate for the Spaniard. Almost certainly would have picked up, I would say, 2 to 4 points, I would say. Probably 4, but could have been 6 points. So very unfortunate for Alonso there. But he's able to make the car get back to the pits. Otherwise, if he had stopped there on track, that would have completely changed the narrative for the rest of the race. Williams asked their drivers to swap positions next. Albon getting ahead of Sainz. They decided that Sainz was maybe being a bit of a roadblock for his teammate, so basically they asked him to switch positions to get Sainz out ahead, or get Russell or Albon out ahead. And this is kind of where I probably should have gone a step softer, just because of what was going on with the tires. Lap 28, Russell is the first driver from the leaders to pit, comes out in 12th. Lap 29, Antonelli pits, and he's, he gets ahead of Bortoleto. So again, shows that even though Antonelli had that poor start, was behind those two, it seemed like staying running longer in clean air was generally the way to go on this race. And it seems like starting on the hard tires and then pitting about a couple laps from this point onto the medium tires was generally kind of the optimal strategy for today's race. Lap 31, Sainz pits us now, comes out between Behrman and Tsunoda. Lap 23, Hadjar pits, comes out 16th behind Sainz, but again, he was started on the hard tires and switched to the medium. So again, he would have been on the quicker tire ahead at this point. Leclerc pits to cover Russell and comes out miles ahead. And I think Leclerc basically came on the radio asking why they paid him, because he felt he could have gone a lot longer and he felt very comfortable on the tires. And Ferrari basically said, we'll discuss after, which maybe implied that they had to pit for plank wear. Again, not a confirmation of that, but anyway, for Leclerc's race, didn't have a big impact one way or another. He was basically glued on to P4 today, a bit like Verstappen last week with P3, except of course, Norris's engine went and blew itself up. Lap 38, Verstappen pits, comes out in 3rd, and this is where we have an incident between Sainz and Behrman. So Sainz and Behrman made contact at turn 4. Basically, Sainz, I think, had overtaken Behrman on track, and he basically had the outside line, and basically he was the car ahead of the apex, as we can pretty clearly see here. But he basically, when he turns in the corner, he basically turns in basically right to the apex, and basically gives nowhere for Behrman to go. Behrman was basically still alongside him. Could Behrman have backed out of this corner? I think he could have. But that being said, the two make contact, the two go spinning around, both lose a position to Hadjar and continue on their way. So they don't lose a lot in terms of on-track position. I think they only lost that one position. But again, momentum, there's probably some damage to the car as well. And Behrman would basically pick up a 10-second penalty for that. So Stewart's having another bit of a questionable afternoon after, again, a rough afternoon last week with a couple penalties that I think many felt were questionable. I think the penalty on Behrman was definitely a bit too harsh. In my opinion, racing incident. Both drivers had a little bit of blame for that incident, and therefore there shouldn't have been a penalty in the first place. And again, if one or both drivers had stopped on track at this point, brought out a safety car, even a virtual safety car, that could easily completely change the complexion of the race, at least at the front, and you potentially would have ended up with a McLaren 1-2 and a very upset Max Verstappen in third. But luckily for Max Verstappen, both drivers were able to continue on their way. No VSC, no safety car necessary. Albon pits, comes out right behind Antonelli, and this is we're on lap 45. Albon overtakes Antonelli for a net P7, and during this overtake, basically Antonelli would get a 5-second penalty for erratic driving. I think I only saw it once on the replay, so I haven't looked at this that many times, but again, it's one of those things where if it's a bit more borderline, I think maybe a little bit harsh, but also perhaps probably justified. Now, this is the big moment in the race that I think obviously a lot of people are going to be talking about afterwards. And so basically, McLaren are running second, third. Actually, no, they're running first and second, but Verstappen is gaining at a rate of knots. Now, regardless of what they do, they will end up second and third. Verstappen will retake the lead and eventually win the Grand Prix. But they basically have stayed out a bit longer than optimal. Should have pitted 5-10 laps prior, and they were basically just hoping for a safety car at some point that would magically save the race and give them a 1-2 or at least the win. So basically they decided over the radio, at least on Norris's side of the radio, that they were going to pit Piastri first to basically cover up cover off Leclerc. And again, the message on the radio is you don't have anything to worry about, you won't lose your position. And at this point, Norris has about a 3 to 4 second lead on Norris. And again, with the way that the track degradation was today, it was not that big of a deal whether or not you had an undercut or an overcut. I think really just track clean-out was really the most important thing. So Piastri does his pit stop, very, very good stop, 1.9 seconds. Following lap, Norris does his pit stop. It's a bit of a shocker. It's a 5.9 second stop, so almost exactly 5 seconds slower than Piastri's, and that causes him to lose P2. McLaren come over the team radio and basically ask them to swap positions in the interest of fairness, and Piastri basically comes over the radio saying, I didn't know that slow stops were, part of papaya rules, and he was he had the understanding that having slow stops, which again, pretty normal part of racing, was just that part of racing where it's one of those things where it's been a bad luck one way or another, and again, it wasn't going to be something that would cause the drivers to be basically having the race was all manipulated. Now again, if Norris has a slow stop and if Piastri gets hit just through the undercut alone, get a bit like Hungary 2024 last year, then I think sure, it would have been understandable, but because of one of these random situations, like if this had been a VSC or a safety car type thing, would they have gone to the same lengths to make sure that things were fair? So in my opinion, I think it was pretty lame. It's one of those things where I think just having such a high fixation on like manipulating things, and it especially with the perception that seems like the majority of the manipulation is in Norris's favor and not Piastri's, does I think leave a sour taste in many people's mouth. And yeah, so that was that. And of course, after that, you have actually, why is this here? There we go. Yeah. Oh yeah. Basically, the team orders. Piastri basically lets Norris past. Very gentlemanly behavior. And of course, Max Verstappen takes the checkered flag for his third win of the season. A race that was, I think, a win that was really overshadowed by what was going on over at McLaren. So taking a look at your race result, of course, the podium, Verstappen from Norris and Piastri. The rest of your point scorers are Leclerc, Russell, Hamilton, Albon, Bortoleto, Antonelli, and Hadjar. Great race by Hadjar, going from pit lane to points. 11th Sainz, 12th Behrman, 13th Tsunoda, bitter shocker from him. 14th Lawson. Oh yeah, that's the other thing I forgot to mention. Lawson and Tsunoda would end up making contact. Perhaps a bit of damage to the two of them, and again, probably didn't help their race a whole lot. 15th Ocon, 16th Gasly, 17th Colapinto, and 18th was Stroll. Your one DNF was Alonso, and your DNS, of course, was Hülkenberg. Now, in terms of Drivers' Championship, a couple of changes for position, but just in terms of the Drivers' Championship fight, Piastri now leads from Norris by 31 points, so 3-point swing in Norris's favor, and again, without those team orders, it's a 3-point swing the other way. Instead, you would be looking at a 37-point lead. Now, further down the championship, we have Albon now overtakes Antonelli for 7th, a bit of an embarrassing one for that. For Antonelli, Albon on 70 points, Antonelli on 66. For 9th, Hadjar now overtakes Hulkenberg, 38 points to 37. And a bit further down, Bortoleto is now 16th in the championship on 18 points, and that drops Behrman and Sainz down 1 position each. For Constructors' Championship, McLaren, of course, build their lead, or like every other weekend, now sitting on 617 points. Ferrari second, 280. Mercedes third, 260, and then fourth is Verstappen racing on 239. Again, Verstappen is basically keeping Red Bull in this, but still 41-point deficit is a little bit, will be tough, and with Tsunoda basically barely contributing to that tally, it will be very tough for Red Bull to challenge the 2 cars ahead of them. Williams, really good result for them today, 86 points, kind of gives them a bit more of a buffer over Aston and Racing Bulls with 62 and 61 points each. So a good weekend today, get a bit closer to those two on 55. And then you have Haas in 9th, a bit cut adrift on 44, and Alpine very cut adrift on 20 points. So there you go. That is my review for the 2025 Italian Grand Prix. I think the on-track action was not amazing outside the first 5 to 10 laps, and then you get a couple clashes here and there. I think, again, a lot of the big talking points until the next Grand Prix in Azerbaijan will be about those team orders at McLaren. And, hypothetically, should the same incident or a very similar incident happen in a potential title deciding race in Abu Dhabi, what will happen there? So, anyway, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.